Yep.
Next up is Survey123 for ArcGIS tips and tricks. Jordan Miller from Esri. Mr. Miller joined Esri in 2016 with an extensive background in local government industry knowledge, as well as years of experience working in the private sector. Jordan's primary role with Esri is focusing on solving business challenges with a geospatial approach. Jordan works with all levels of local government in Wisconsin and has been working heavily in solutions and technology practices for land information, public works operations, law enforcement, fire, and EMS, with the focus on real-time LOT and situational awareness concepts and mobile applications. Take it away, Jordan.
All right, thank you. Let's get this screen dialed up here. Okay. Any of the moderators just want to give me a thumbs up or something like that when you can see the, all right, good deal. Well, I'll try and keep my camera on for the time being. You know, but if internet gets sketchy, I'll go ahead and shut it off. I got that Hudson, Wisconsin internet, and they don't always, it's not always great. So anyway, let's spend the next couple minutes here talking about Survey123 and looking at it in more or less like a tips and tricks type of environment. I know there's a lot, and especially with field maps coming out, smart forms within that, all the different capabilities. You know, 2 different flavors of Survey123 with the web version and Survey123 Connect. There's a lot there, so hopefully, you know, you guys might learn something new today. There's going to be kind of a smattering of different subjects, so let's just get right into it. I think my cursor disappeared. Okay, so just a quick high level of some of the things that I'd like to cover today is just a quick intro for some of you who may not be super familiar with working with Survey123, both the web designer and Survey123 Connect. Want to talk about some of the different list options. I think these kind of go a bit unnoticed in some different ways. Then I want to get into working with some you know, what's out there to work with existing feature services, or use a feature service for a template or things like that to work with data that you already have. Talk about some app integrations, working with webhooks, some of the different webhook technology that exists out there right now that you can take advantage of right now, and you've been able to with Survey123 for a bit of time now, and then close it out with some different integration talk with external devices. So with all that said, let's get right into it. So just a quick level set. What is Survey123? And its most basic form, it's a form. It is a form designed to capture geospatial data, but still emulate that form-based data collection feel, that look and feel. So whether that be, you know, being out in the field collecting data, or whether that be posting something on the web, it's going to have that form type feel. So this is very familiar. This is, you know, kind of eases the transition for some people who might not be too eager to switch to web technology, but it can be used in a number of different areas, whether it's disaster response, whether it's local government, whether it's you know, natural resources, conservation, you name it. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but you know, really the in essence why these types of tools make sense is, I mean, it reduces errors. I mean, keeping processes standardized, restricting different choices, you know, it just reduces errors. It you know, especially when you're out in the field, you know, if you're using pen and paper, people are going to, you know, take shortcuts. If there's you know, spelling issues, or, you know, getting that data back into a digital format, you know, all those things take time. So this is going to allow that person who's out in the field to, you know, take care of things quicker, cut down on some training, and then fully take advantage of these things that we all got in our pockets these days, which is basically just a computer. So with an altimeter, with a camera, with all these different sensors that we can take advantage of and leverage within Survey123. So it makes a lot of sense. And this gets that data from the field to the office in real time or near real time if you want to take it offline. I know there's flavors of both that you can take advantage of. All that data then, again, takes advantage of your internal GPS or an external GPS unit to spatially enable that data. So behind the scenes, what this does is when you publish a survey, it spins up a couple feature services. You're going to have your form and you're going to have your feature services. You're going to have your one's going to exist as item, one's going to exist as an editable layer, and one's just going to exist as a view. This opens up a whole lot of capabilities, especially when you're talking about working with the ArcGIS platform as a whole. And as Ryan had that awesome slide up, that 5 field mobility patterns, being able to leverage these services in dashboards to make sense of the data after we collect it and start to think about how we're going to use it beyond the fact of just, designing a rockstar method to go out in the field and collect data. It's all about how we're going to use it and what type of decisions we're going to make off that. And plus, disseminating that data throughout your organization to make sure it's in the right hands of the right people who need it. Again, this is speaks to internal use as well as public use as well. So making these forms available to the general public to get their feedback on certain topics. But ultimately, I like to keep it really simple, is you want to be able to ask questions so you can get answers and make decisions. I mean, that's why we're collecting data out in the field, is, whether that's for inventories, whether that's inspections on inventories, whether that's going out and polling citizens. You're really just looking for information, and this is a great way to take form-based concepts and turn them into a digital survey that you can get going with. But really what's going to add a lot of strength to this is making that survey smart. So we'll get into some of these different features that make that survey smart, but this is really kind of gets into the whole philosophy of designing that survey and some of the different things that when you're thinking about tips and tricks, you kind of got to know what's in the toolbox in order to know what tool you can use. So hopefully what we can go through here in this section a little bit is some of the different mechanisms within Survey123 you can take advantage of. That's going to allow you to really make that survey work for you and to be able to give it that feature completeness that you're looking for in that survey. So we can do that by using some different expressions. Now, again, I'll preface this by saying there are different capabilities that you can build into your surveys using Survey123 Connect, which is the native version, the builder version, then on the web version. But if you want to get into specifics, we can take that offline for sure. But what we can do is we can use these different expressions to hide and show questions as appropriate. So, if you guys have ever been down to the, use this terrible analogy, at the DMV or something like that, or at the doctor's office where you need to fill out a form. Well, if you answer yes to number 3, okay, go ahead and skip down to question number 32 if you haven't had any allergic responses, stuff like that. So using some of these different expressions and capabilities, you can hide and only show relevant questions based on the previous input. So that keeps people focused, it keeps them engaged, and allows them to execute that work quicker. You can pre-calculate values, you can validate user input on certain questions, and then there's some other uses that we'll talk about as we go on here. But all these are really designed to make that survey smart, to make them the most effective that they can possibly be when you're out in the field or you want to get that feedback. So there's a couple of different places to use your different expressions. There's constraints, which limit the user's inputs. There's relevance. So if the answer equals A, then the next question could possibly be hidden. Or there's a relevancy message, where if the user selects C, they're going to get a message further clarifying that response. So there's different mechanisms within that as you're going through and thinking about these expressions you can use to help guide that user along through that experience of filling out that form. And the last one here is the calculations. These are used to pre-populate questions, which can be really effective if you want to do some different conversions, or you want to take a get a summary of select multiple type question fields if you're using a list to say, just to give you some quick summary statistics. And then again, like I said, unit conversions, but let's run through a couple of these different examples. We don't have to spend a ton of time here, but these, like I have here, it's very similar, but they're not the same as Excel. Obviously, our variable calls in that field type, if you want to think about it. So if we wanted to do a conversion, we're going to call in that variable, that field type or that field name, and then multiply or run that conversion to change this to convert it into meters. So from feet to meters, we can just plug in that simple expression, and that'll populate a new field if desired to do so. Comparisons, true false type expressions. If you want to take the variable type for age, if it's greater than 17, it will return as an adult, or if it's under 18 or between the age of 18 and 65, it can return a true or false value if they're over or in between. You guys get the gist there. Calculations, like I said, these are great for doing different conversions or just taking a quick summary of user input if they are using a list of select multiple, or maybe you have some calculations built into a couple of different fields and you want to do a summary calculation to get a total. So let's just say hours spent on a project, material costs spent on a project. Give me a sum total of that in a new field, and you can set that up to have Survey123 go ahead and do that calculation for you. It's going to save you some time on the back end, and as well give you that new field to generate data or display data in either a subsequent tool like dashboards or insights. Lots of great tools in these calculations and expressions that you can take advantage of. Last one here is creating if-then expressions. So these are kind of conditional. So if the variable or the entry age is greater or equal to 18, then we're going to apply an adult, or if it's false, we're going to give them a designation of minor. So again, kind of covers a large spectrum there of different expressions to suit some different needs. Again, the goal here was just kind of to try and go through and talk about what some of these different expressions are and when to use them. Each one of the survey forms, especially if you're using Connect in that XLS document, they have some cheat sheets, some guides on the third tab that you can go through and track down some different formatting, some different expression type usage to really get dialed in there. So choice lists, this is my next topic here. I just want to spend a little bit on choice lists. Some of the different essentials, like why to use them. Obviously, it's just like a coded domain in a file geodatabase. If you want to think about it in that concept, if you're going out in the field, this is going to speed up data collection, but it's also going to reduce those errors. We have a couple of different ways we can run this. Select one if you want the user to only be able to select one choice, or select multiple. Then you can generate that list, and it's going to be stored through either your list view, or if you're using the web designer, you build that directly in that question in the design pane. So just some basics here, and I'm happy to share these slides out. We don't need to get too far into the details on some of these rules, but that list is going to consist of the list name, the name and label. Pretty straightforward. So you tell that question what list to pick from. So this is an example of a list. So if you wanted to have a how confident are you in that species, you can have just a general subjective list here. But if you wanted to actually get down to a species name, you'd have the name here, and then you would have the label, what it would show up as in that field. But if you wanted to go through and you know have those select one or select multiple, you would designate that in the list, so you could enable, you know, or supporting a certain type of question, you know, like how did you get to work this week, or what's your primary mechanism for commute, whether that be biking or driving. Not a lot of biking going on right now because it's 40 below, but you know, just to be able to support those multiple type responses. And then, you know, you can also put in that expression formatting as well to make that a bit more logical. The one I really wanted to spend some time on here was cascading selects. I think this is going to really improve a lot of surveys that potentially could get created, or, you know, give you guys some ideas on ways to design future surveys. And this is, there's one part that I left out of this list as well, but we can go into some detail on. There's cascading selects and there's external selects. So if you don't want to pair the that list directly in the XLS form, you can set it up to select from an external list. We can talk a bit more about that, but with cascading selects, if you want to think about it as, you know, you're going to start out with an overall category. So let's just use the category like, you know, the United States. And then within the United States, you have states, obviously. And then within states, you have counties. Within counties, you have townships. And each one of those, if you think about it, it's, you know, starting from larger and working down into smaller as you're filling out a form, you know, whether that could be, you know, if you're using Survey123 to create a sign inventory, you know, you guys who've worked with the manual on uniform traffic control devices know that that list is terrible. I mean, there's so much stuff to go through on there. It's hard to wrap your head around. But if you wanted to take that and start to break it down to make that survey a lot easier, or that data collection method a lot easier, you could start off by selecting regulatory sign, and then that's going to limit all the potential returns. It's basically going to pre-filter that list down to show only the regulatory signs that are within that cascading select. So I have an example here, but this uses trees. So it's basically only broken down into two categories, genus and species here. So we have the overall genus, which can contain a lot of different species, and there's three different genus selectable. And again, I'm not a tree expert. Don't quote me on some of these tree things here, but as you can see, if somebody who knew trees better was able to select, you know, one of these specific types of genus, they could then their next potential options would be immediately filtered down and to be only, let's just say, 4 choices instead of 12. It allows that user in the field to simplify and make that process a lot easier. Same thing can be said if you're using this for, you know, getting work done out in the field, or you know, responding to materials used. You know, the same types of projects and materials for one department are not going to be the same for another department. So you could start to filter that, like if you're thinking about it in a local government context, filter it by public works, parks, facilities, so on and so forth, and allow them to pick the most appropriate answer like that. I think there's a lot of utility in these cascading selects. So if you haven't played around with them or built them into your Survey 123 repertoire quite yet, definitely worth taking a look at. Next, I want to get into is creating surveys against an existing feature service. So you can do this against hosted services or federated services if you have some sort of enterprise geodatabase. So you can use either Portal for ArcGIS, ArcGIS Online, wherever those services come from, wherever they originate from. We can use those to start to spin up a brand new beautiful survey. The idea is you, within Survey123 Connect primarily is the method I would look at here. You would log in, you would navigate through your content to find the service that you would like to create that form against, and then you would go through and allow Survey123 to spin up that service. What it's going to essentially configure when it puts together those questions is it's going to leverage whatever feature class schema that's already designed around it. So if you have coded domains in there, if you have, whatever the, field types equal, things like that, it'll go ahead and define all that for you. You can have the option to go in there and provide additional logic, or create forms against a repeat layer if you wanted to use like a, like standalone tables or anything like that. I'm sorry, not standalone tables. But what you could do is, and then you would publish it, and that would set your submission URL within that survey settings properties, and the form ID within the survey settings properties. Sorry, it was related tables, not standalone tables. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So it's a really quick and simple way to do it. I will say that there are a couple of different requirements I think it's important to take note of. And if you do run into issues with this is probably going to be the first place you should look, is supporting, or make sure that feature service supports apply edits with global IDs. We don't have to track this down too far, but again, I'll make these slides available. So if you do start playing around with this is a good place to start to track down where you might be running into some issues. There's a lot of documentation and blog posts about this. So just to know, there's a bunch of resources out there that'll help you get started creating surveys against existing feature services. So reports, I'm going to do a quick time check. What do I got? I got till 3:30, right? Okay, awesome. So we're cruising right along. So reports in Survey123. So there's a couple of different, what I just call built-in reporting type tools right in Survey123 if you're not familiar with using those. Now, as you start to get input back on those surveys, obviously you're going to want to do something with that data. And maybe that's high level, maybe that's more just general. I want to get a sense of, the type of responses that we're getting, and, figure out, once you get that information, you want to take action on it somehow. But so there's some pre-built in reporting capabilities that's going to allow you to really get, start to examine that survey data, find trends, start to understand maybe if anything's happening in the collection process, or maybe we're not getting as many responses as we thought. Maybe we need to look at some things differently. But a lot of this is contained right in that Survey123 application. You can export these results to Word documents, or you can just quickly slap them in a PowerPoint if you want to do a quick summary report. There's a quick overview tab, so if you wanted to see how much usage that survey is getting, this is just right above in the design toolbar. There's some quick analysis type tabs you can go through and view the reporting for that particular survey. This is a bit more detailed view of the interaction with that survey and in the input. So you can show this in a bar chart, a quick summary table with percentage of answers, some counts. If you wanted to generate a word cloud, that's definitely an option as well. But each one of these different out-of-the-box report tools can be exported and printed as a report if you'd like to take that and do something with that, whether that be for a meeting or you need to brief the boss or anything along those lines. There's also the data tab. Obviously, if you're just doing some exploratory stuff, you can quick pop in and take a look at where data is coming in from and some of the different responses like that. Very similar to just opening up that feature service in a web map. It allows you to just quickly support some exploratory analysis, not do anything too in depth, but just get in there and snoop around a little bit. So custom reports. Now there's some different things you can do with creating different feature reports on the data page with Survey123. there is some stuff that is being developed in this piece of functionality, but essentially what it's doing is it's allowing you to manage your different templates. And I'll just go ahead and advance to the next slide here, and show you guys. So what it does is it essentially, your template gets cooked up as it's using Microsoft Word, but that Word document recognizes the syntax of that Survey123. So if we're trying to call different variables within that document that's going to act as our custom report template, we're going to do it the same way we're going to call those different variables if we're writing an expression within that survey itself. So here we see a couple of different examples of the way we can call a particular result of a survey in case we wanted to, provide somebody back that information on what they submitted, or print these out for some hard copy records, things like that. But support is getting pointed towards developing these feature reports. So I know there's more to come on these, but something that gives you another angle of approach to work with that collected data once it's already kind of trickled through and gone through that whole collection process, the design process, and now you're starting to use it. Just another way to start to work with that as well. I'll get into integrating Survey123 with other apps, and I think that's actually pretty pertinent because this slide's going to change a lot in the future here. With field maps, and as that gains more momentum, and people start building that into their everyday workflows, this is going to look a lot different. But Survey123, even with smart forms, is going to remain as a product that we're going to support, just because it is such a robust tool. But right now, as it sits, you can use Survey123 with a lot of the different field mobility applications in that whole field mobility stack. They're really designed to support one another, especially when we're talking about like Workforce Navigator and Survey123 to help you get to that assignment, tell you what to do, and then allow you to collect data when you're on site, and then tell you how to get to the next one. There's a lot of great stuff, but the way that this can be expanded upon is by leveraging, and this one I think is probably, if I had to vote, probably higher up there on the tips and tricks, because there's some really great stuff you can do with these custom URL schemes. And again, I'll mention this again. I'll make these slides available. There's blog posts and documentation on the custom URL schemes that you can use with Survey123 that's going to allow you to pair them with different applications like dashboards. That's a great example to play around with. But anyway, what it's going to allow you to do is you can, from one application, you can actually launch the Survey123 application by leveraging that custom URL scheme. So what do I mean by this? Well, it's might look like a big, long, messy URL, but it's specifically telling it what to do. And so by using this URL scheme, we can tell that link to call the Survey123 field application, and then that question mark is going to start that collection of parameters. So then we specify the survey as the first parameter, and then say what we want to be able to do. So if we want to enable an edit on a particular record in a particular survey, we can call that in that Survey123 URL scheme. So I had a quick sidebar with David before here, and one of the examples I was talking about is basically taking an operations dashboard that's consuming a feature service that has all these different points on a map, and then within one of the elements in operations dashboard, you can embed content, but using a URL scheme as a custom pop-up, on that feature service in the web map, you can actually open Survey123 and edit a record through that dashboard. So there's a lot of great stuff that you can do if you are looking on how to extend that Survey123 or use it in these different applications, whether that be calling it in different applications, or maybe you just want to initiate that response to launch a specific survey. You can be very specific by using that custom URL scheme to make sure that that user is going to get access to the right survey and that right content. Hopefully that makes sense. That's there's some really great stuff here in the URL schemes. Couple additional styling pieces of information with the URL schemes. There's different ways you can change the navigation bar, the header, description, footer, all that fun stuff. Again, we don't need to get too far into this, but just a bit more contextual information. Again, that if you do decide to take some of these tips and tricks to practice, and you want to take the slide deck and start hacking through some of the stuff, it's a great resource, and with also some more documented resources within that to pull extra info from and develop some of your surveys. So again, like I said, I know I got about 9 minutes here. I'm gonna put the pedal down. So again, another example of this would be to use collector for ArcGIS, which is now gonna split into ArcGIS field maps. So probably not too relevant here, but again, just enforcing being able to use that URL scheme workflow by enabling pop-ups in that web map features. That pop-up can specifically call that specific Survey123, and through that URL payload, you can tell it exactly what you want it to do and what you want it to enable for that end user to use. Couple of points to remember: it's supported in online and enterprise 10.5 or newer. So if you're using enterprise, or just think about that 10.5 release. Make sure that for that experience to log into Survey123 before utilizing the custom URL scheme. This is just going to bypass any issues you have about bouncing it off, any type of permission limitations, anything like that. Just some other ones when using like the web map pop-ups. Domains provide label values, dates are in the text, and then populating repeat questions is really not supported at this time. So anyway, let's get cooking on here to this next bit. So this is Webhook integrations. Webhook integrations, I think, and webhooks are, I don't want to say slowly getting supported because it's moving very fast, but it's being added to each of these core products. And there's really a purpose behind that. And I think starting to get yourself familiar with webhooks and what you can do with webhooks is a really good thing to do. It's a really good set of skills to start to brush up on, especially, and Survey123 can be a good way to get yourself some experience doing that with some really simple exercises. So a couple of common use cases, and I know Ishmael on the Survey123 team, he has a ton of blogs about this. So he'll walk you right through from start to finish how to wire some of this stuff up. But a few things that we can do is, if you want to enable instant notifications. So if somebody submits a survey, I can set up that webhook to send an email to my boss saying that somebody submitted it. Or maybe I want that if that survey equaled a value that we would call like critical, it'll only send an email when something comes back as critical. We can set up data transfers, whether we want to pump in all the survey attachments and photos and PDFs or whatever might be coming in with that into a different drive folder. We can create different calendar events scheduled from Survey123, different things like that. There's just a lot of utility in leveraging webhook technology. A lot of different providers are using webhooks as well. Some of the different services. I'll give you. I'm going to skip over that slide for now, and we're just going to take a look at this. It's animations. So what would happen if you just want to conceptually think through this? Since we're using web services with Survey123, we're already hooked up to the web as it is. So we can start to pick up on some of these tools and execute upon them. So a user would submit a survey from the web browser or the Survey123 app on their phone. That data is then initiated and then sent to either ArcGIS Online or Enterprise via the web. But what is also happening is whatever webhook platform you're working with, whether that's like Microsoft Flow or Integromat. Integromat's free, so if you want to play around with it, that's a good place to start. What that's going to do is you're going to have that webhook listening essentially to forward that payload to come through, and it's going to initiate a response off of that. So as that submission comes through, it's going to trigger either sending that email from whatever email provider you want to use, and then also you can use it to schedule like a Google Calendar or whatever calendar you're using that supports some type of webhook integration. I mean, the list is very, very long of different platforms out there that are using webhooks right now. So again, this is great stuff to start to brush up on. A couple ideas of what it really looks like to set up some of these different automation processes. So it's a very modular drag and drop type experience where you build out that process. Nothing to be intimidated by. It's something we have connectors set up already for Survey123 and tutorials. So yeah, I'd say if you're taking one thing away from this tips and tricks, I would go play around with this. This is great, and no coding required, which is also a perk. Lastly, I'll and the fire hose, we're going to start turning this fire hose off here. Some of the different integrations. So obviously, location can be impacted by whatever device you're going to use. We want to be able to, be consistent in the location quality that we're providing with all the applications. So much like how Collector had, much like how now Field Maps is going to have, Survey123 needs that ability to integrate with Bluetooth receivers, GPS, GNSS, survey grade, you name it. We want to be able to pull in that type of information and support being able to store that metadata as well. Being able to use your different geocoders, if you have geocoders built, to consume that through different Geosearch functions, if you want to, not force the user to drag around the map interface, and they can just type in the address and have that Geosearch pop up and with that address they're trying to find. Or you can also leverage Esri's geocoder. A few tidbits on the external GPS receivers. There's the direct connection, there's the OS connection. Again, we don't have to get super deep into this. Pretty much the takeaway here is that it provides you with the ability to choose whether you want to use the integrated GPS on your device or connect to an external device. It will store that GNSS metadata as well if you would like it to. You have that option as the user defines the survey itself to decide which pieces of that you'd like to keep. And then Spike integrations. So if you haven't worked with Spike before and you want to take a look at some of the capabilities, Spike is a great accompaniment to your smartphone or tablet that's going to start to capture dimensions from a picture. So I know this is popular in, again, in the local government space, sign inventories, things like that. Getting those sign dimensions off of an image can sometimes be difficult. Spike makes that a lot more manageable. They have a lot of great solutions out there, and it's already wired up to work with Survey123. Wrapping up. Holy smokes, we're just about to cross the finish line with Actually, 3 minutes to spare. I'm looking at my computer clock is different than my phone clock, and that's odd. So just to wrap up, we provide a little context of what Survey123 is. It's designed for a quick and simple experience using the web application, the web designer, but it's also geared to allow you to really turn that into a robust data collection tool using Survey123 Connect, which is the native version on your desktop. There's a lot of different question types out there. I'd say if you're wondering if something is supported or it exists, most likely it is. I know that team is very aggressive on making sure that what users are asking for in that GeoNet sub is covered. They're adding stuff all the time, but there's a lot of really helpful information as far as question types, choices, logic, calculations, things like that directly found in the survey if you're using Survey123 Connect. But it's very well documented in our Esri support documentation if you do have any further questions. Ran through creating surveys from feature service. That is a great way to quickly build out a survey, leveraging some data sets that might need a little freshening up or you want to add to. And again, you can run that off both hosted and federated services if you need to. Extending those, being able to use custom reports to allow the processing or further use of that data outside of just the data collection itself, and leverage all the full breadth of the what's in the box type tools from Survey123, but also keeping in mind that Survey123 uses those feature services, which we can then consume in, again, insights or operations dashboards. So there's always more ways to extend how we're going to work with that data at the end of the day. And then last couple things, webhooks. Webhooks is a great way to extend out that platform to really automate that that not the data collection process, but those after action steps. So making sure people are notified when different things are happening or when things are observed to be happening if you're using Survey123 to do that. But also just a wealth of different tools that you can find there to extend this tool. So with that, I'll leave a couple of different links up here on the page. Again, I'll share these slides out. If you want them, you can. I don't know if David, if you guys got some, if you guys are gonna collect all the different presentations or how that's gonna work, but one way or another, we can get these to you. It has help documentation, tutorial videos, the GeoNet resources, just an awesome resource. So with that, I will wrap it up and open the floor to questions if we have time. This is the last one of the day, right?
Yes, it is. We just got our mug sig starting at 4. So
Okay.
There's one question that I saw in the chat. Any enhancements have been requested for laser rangefinders, aka from LaserTech, to be used with Survey123?
From LaserTech, I'm not entirely sure. I would have to get into that one. I just figured out how to show my chat again. I'm reading it. It went away, and I was, oh man, presentation mode, I tell you. Okay, yeah, I'd be curious to learn more about LaserTech. I know there's a lot of different devices that support or that are supported through just simple Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connections to these different devices. Yeah, that would be something we'd have to get one-on-one on and take a look at what they're doing with it right now. And then let's see. Was there another one on here?
I did not see one.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and miss being there with everybody, but this will work.
Well, thank you, Jordan. All right.